point, other business was presented to the board, and I do have, Renita, did I pronounce that correct?
Yes.
Renita, if you would come up and I need you to state your name and spell your last name for the court report, for the board report.
Renita Bonadies, Bonadies.
Mrs. Bonadies, we have a number of documents. You had emailed some documents.
Correct.
And then you presented some when you arrived this morning.
Yes.
Which I apologize, we've only had a few minutes to look at, so.
Understandable.
Can we just go the other route and ask you to tell us what's on your mind?
Well, I was going to just read my public comment, and then that's the supporting documentation for what I was going to present. So, good morning, Renita Bonadies from Homer Township in Midland County. I sent an email to this board back in November and again in January with my concerns and questions about some things I witnessed in Midland County at the Board of Canvassers meetings following the November 5th election. And I did attend the Thursday and Tuesday meeting that followed. I also sent a packet to the Secretary of State and Attorney General's offices with no responses. And I also emailed the Bureau of Elections because I've been trying to call and find contacts. First, I was on the ballot as a write-in candidate for County Clerk. I was at the closing of the polls on election night for the early voting center. I knew the number of total votes I received, but they were not separated by townships and precincts, just a total. I attended the Board of Canvassers meetings and questioned how they could report the write-in votes by precinct, and I was told that they didn't need to since early voting was a precinct. I asked again at the second day of the Board of Canvassers meeting and was told that they had done it properly. The official election results for Midland County did not adjudicate the write-in votes for any race, which included the presidential, Senate, and county clerk races, because they all had write-in votes at early voting and they were not tallied at the precinct level. Is this really the way these votes were to be tallied and reported by the Board of Canvassers? Is there a required adjudication process for invalid votes to count as undervotes? Our records simply show all write-in votes for all races. Also, there are no names of the actual valid write-in candidates that received votes, like in the presidential race. I did check out other counties and spoke with people on their boards, and they said that they did tally their early voting by precinct, and their county official results reflect all races and precincts with that information. Also, I've been attending the Board of Canvassers meetings for the past 2 years following the elections. I noticed that they are to be public meetings. Our board is separated into 2 groups. Each group has 1 Democrat and 1 Republican on the team, and each reviewing about half of the precinct records. The 2 groups sit and speak so softly to each other that the public has no idea what's being discussed. It's more like watching 2 subcommittees simultaneously having a meeting. It is certainly not all 4 listening and reviewing each of the precinct records as one board. And I do have video recordings of all of these proceedings as well. Is this the proper way to conduct this post-election canvass? Can they certify that they have reviewed all of the records when they only reviewed half of them in 2 groups? These are a few of the questions I have and have not been able to get a definitive answer. Finally, all of the municipalities contracted with the county to run the early voting for them. Their contract was for the county to produce the same results they would have received had they done the early voting polling themselves. Instead, the county could not produce the precinct level results for the write-in candidates on the ballots. My question is, did they breach their contract? I know our township paid $7,500 for them to do that service for them, and yet they cannot produce a precinct level result for all of the races on the ballot. Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question for Mr. Fracassi. Did the board respond, or excuse me, did the Bureau respond to an inquiry from Ms. Bonadies about the procedure followed by the Midland County Board of Canvassers?
So a couple of things. So we have there have been a number of FOIA requests that have been submitted. We've responded to the FOIA requests. As far as the first email that I have is from January 14th. It does look like, based on what I've seen that's before you, it does look like the wrong email was used previously. So I don't have any record of getting anything prior to January 14th. It does not look like, though, that we've responded since January to the January 14th email at this time.
Let me just ask another question. It is true, is it not, that the Bureau of Elections provides to the counties guidance for how county canvassing boards are to conduct their canvasses?
Yes, that's accurate.
And there is an official manual, I believe, for the county canvassing boards?
Yes.
Does the board have any, or perhaps I can ask the attorneys this, does the Bureau or the board have any jurisdiction over what the county canvassers are doing? What I'm really asking, I understand that Ms. Bonadies has a concern about what the county canvassing board did, but I don't think we have anything to do with it. That's not our responsibility, nor it's my understanding, and I would want confirmation of this. I don't think there's anything that we can do about it.
I'm not aware of the board having supervisory authority over the county boards. And following an election, there's the canvass process itself, with the board reviewing the canvass returns. But I don't think beyond that, I don't think the board stands in like a superintending role over how the county boards conduct their business.
The question that goes with that, in the event that someone has an issue that they're pointing out with a county board, that we don't have the ability to step in on, what would be the normal next step to follow? Would that go through the Secretary of State's office, through the Bureau of Elections, and then Sec State, or if somebody has a problem with a county?
I'm reluctant to speak extemporaneously without looking into it. I think you could direct concerns to the Bureau and to the Secretary of State. It may also be worthwhile for a person to contact their own attorney if they're looking to compel the board to perform a specific duty that might arise in some type of legal action that they would need their own legal representation to engage.
From our standpoint, I mean, we certainly can provide instructions to the clerks. We do sometimes, in the context of post-election audits, identify procedural issues which can be correct, which we'll assign training and provide additional guidance on. Additionally with this, I mean, this was the first major election where we had early voting. So that did raise a lot of new issues about organizing results by precinct that we're certainly going to look at for future rounds of training. In terms of the result, ultimately, there is always the ability to request a recount if someone contests, doesn't believe that the ballots are tallied properly, and you still have the paper ballots available. So ultimately, you still do have records that you can review to determine exactly which write-in ballots were tallied, which were cast in which precinct, from which precinct, and you also have the ability to contest those during the recount. And then there's also obviously the ability to file a lawsuit. So those would be the ways of contesting the actual outcome. But in terms of the procedures, it's certainly something that we can look at and see if there's additional ways that we can make more clear the results. One of the other issues, frankly, is that we have the same 14 days after the election to complete the post-election canvasses that we had before early voting, and now we have a whole other set of results. So clerks have supported legislation to expand the canvass period. I think the Department of State supports that as well, but we're sort of stuck with what we have right now.
Okay.
May I make one additional comment? I guess my point is, it's not the results of the elections, it's the process that was used by the Board of Canvass. I mean, it would be equivalent, I've watched the State Board of Canvass after the election. It would be the equivalent of you breaking up into two teams and discussing the results in a quiet session so that the public can't even hear what's going on. We are not able to hear what's being discussed, what votes are there, any issues they're having in the poll books, if anybody wrote any notes. We don't hear any of that. And again, it's questioning if this is indeed an open meeting according to the way it's defined. Then how is it an open meeting if the public sitting there can't even hear it? And like I said, I have the recordings where you can tell you cannot hear what's being discussed as they review each of the precincts. So we don't even know if there was an issue at a precinct because it's whispered off in one of the groups. So it's the process that I'm concerned with. I mean, I had one county actually, when I called to verify how they did it, they were actually going to take a field trip to Midland to find out how we got done so fast. And I told them, I said, I can tell you it's because we break up into two teams and they're done quicker than almost anybody else. It takes a matter of a few hours for them to complete their canvass. So again, it's not the results of this particular race. It's the process that's being used. And I've sat through these for 2 years now, and it's always the same process. I did point out at this last one that they didn't even have public comment. And I'm like, this is an open meeting act. You have to have public comment. So they did actually include that at the last one. But it's again, educating the public. And if it's an open meeting, why is the public not able to hear what's being discussed by the board? So, and yes, I understand early voting is a new issue, but I also checked with the other counties to see how they handled accounting for their processes. Our early voting produced a single document with just totals. They never produced anything that broke it out by precincts. And when I questioned why the Dominion tapes weren't used to determine that for the write-in candidates by precinct, they told me I didn't know what I was talking about. And that our machine didn't produce it, even though I know another county did use their machine tapes to actually produce their write-ins by precincts so they could report them properly. So again, it's the process that's being used. Do we need more details in our documentation for this process? Perhaps, but those are just observations I've had, and I was curious, and I've been asking questions and sending packets, Secretary of State, Attorney General. Nobody was responding, so that's why I'm here today to just bring it to your attention.
We appreciate you bringing it to our attention. That said, I'm not sure we have a direction for you other than as Mr. Brillis suggested, you can certainly retain an attorney locally.
I realize we can always spend money and keep attorneys
but your
well
relationship
employed.
with your county clerk is not such that you can sit down and.
I have attempted multiple times to correct this, and I have been met with fair hostility about it. And that's why he mentioned FOIA request, qualified voter files. I work with election data. I have it denied frequently locally, and I have to run it up to the state to find out that yes, indeed, we can get that data locally, and then I have to bring it back down. So I've been doing this now for a couple of years, trying to learn the process. So
Are you thinking of running for county clerk?
not sure if that's what I'm waiting to see how this is all handled.
Yeah, that would be another approach.
So,
Let me say something. Yeah. I just want to note that there are 83 counties in Michigan, and that means there are 83 canvassing boards, and they determine as best they can how to undertake the canvass. And it's a formidable process. Particularly, I've seen the canvass in Wayne County, where there are teams of people reviewing every single poll book. So asking a small county how they do it as opposed to how Wayne County does it, for example, or Kent County, everybody is going to do it a little bit differently in accordance with their circumstances and how many people they have doing the work.
I understand. And that was why I looked for counties that were comparable size. We also just reduced from 44 precincts. We eliminated some within the city. We went from 19 to 10, so they just reduced it to 35 precincts. And like I said, we're done in just a couple of hours. It's not that it's a long process in our county. So again, why can't they all sit there as a board speaking into mics loud enough that the public sitting there can hear what the issues are and what's happening? So yes, I'm aware that the county size would vary greatly for how that process is carried out. So
Thank you for taking time to come and see us.
thank you.